Welcome to the Bear Talk, your go-to Chicago Bears podcast, where a father and son break down all things Bears. From Soldier Field to Sunday showdowns, I'm your host here, Dylan Weaver, and as always, joined here with my dad. Well, Dad, another practice in the books, except this time it's a little bit different. First joint practice of the season. The Chicago Bears, our Chicago Bears, travel on over to good old Cincinnati, Ohio to take on the Bengals, which obviously consist of, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and obviously their biggest offseason addition, who we'll talk about a lot in this show, Dexter Lawrence. Big defensive tackle, huge payday this offseason, and he showed why he got paid this offseason. We'll get into it, but let's hop right into it. Let's start. Let's start with the Bears offense. I feel like most fans, us fans, now that we have this high-powered offense, everyone wants to hear about the offense. So we'll talk about the offense first. Was a very up and down day for the Bears offense. It sounds like the first 7-on-7, 11-on-11 was off to a little bit of a slow start. Towards the middle, the Bears offense seemed to pick it up at one point. They had Caleb completing 10 passes in a row in 11-on-11s. The red zone work was where the Bears offense seemed to thrive the most, where Caleb was just ripping touchdown after touchdown in the red zone period.
Lasers.
Lasers. Even the Bears, they put out a little highlight of one of the plays today that everyone was talking about, where Caleb lofts, looks like it's a high red zone, but lofts a ball over the top of the guy covering Colston Loveland in man coverage, literally put it in the spot the only way that Colston Loveland could catch it without letting the defender break it up. Dexter Lawrence, who we were just talking about, had a hand up. He was a free rusher right at Caleb. He lofted it even over him. But seemed like red zone was where the offense excelled the most. And towards the end of practice in the 2-minute scenarios is where things started to go south. And you can look at this a couple of different ways. There's a lot to break down in this when it comes to the left tackle. We haven't had a show since last week, but Jedrick Wills and Karan Amagaji, they are no longer in the competition. They got booted on over to right tackle, which we all know at right tackle we have locked down Darnell Wright himself. So they're really just going over there in case, God forbid, anything happens to Darnell Wright. And now over at left tackle, Braxton Jones is back from his little injury. And Theo Benedict, who everyone should know from last year, slid over there. But in that 2-minute period is when Theo Benedict was over there. And both times pass rush instantly got through on his side, kind of broke the play up, backed them up on within their own 1-yard line. There was even reports saying that the refs didn't even know it might have been a safety, how fast that rush got through, and Caleb not getting out of the end zone. Ended up in a 3rd and long where the Bears had to go for it, and Caleb ended up sailing a ball over Colston Loveland because pressure got through, and it ended in a pick. Ultimately, there was 3 sessions of the 2-minute period, and 2 out of the 3 were absolute. I think they were saying they didn't even complete a single pass. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, like I said, it seemed like a pretty back and forth day outside of that 2-minute period, which you like to see. You got to remember too. Like I talked about, Dexter Lawrence, he apparently was in the backfield a bunch today, which isn't a good sign for Garrett Bradbury and those 2 guards, because got to remember Drew Dolman with the early retirement. Garrett Bradbury had to take over. He had a lot of concerns last year. He didn't let up any sacks, but he did let up quite a few pressures from that center position. Obviously, though, it is Dexter Lawrence. It's probably the best defensive tackle they'll face, maybe outside of Vita Vea with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers later on this year. He's an elite player, but still, you don't want to see a guy like this making plays left and right, it seemed like, by the updates we got from the people that were able to attend practice. So for the most part, up and down day for the Bears offense. Still, they said there was plenty of explosive plays hit, like we talked about the red zone period, plenty of touchdowns, but still there are some bads. You got to cover it all in it. From my analyzing just of all the reporting, even not just from Bears reporters, I looked at some Cincinnati people. It seemed like very up and down day. I actually want to read a tweet real quick before I get your thoughts, but this is from a Bengals reporter, a beat reporter that works with the Bengals. Seems to have been an ideal joint practice for the Bengals and Bears, both units for each team. took turns winning. Each offense finished with a slight edge over the opposing defense, but the defenses won the final few drives of practice. Best news of all is no serious injuries reported for either team. Great test for the Bengals defense. Not only does Chicago have one of the league's top offenses, but one of the most creative ones. Good to get some wins, particularly the D line getting pressures, but also shows there's room to improve to compete with an elite unit. Adding in a healthy Dax Hill and Brian Cook should only help. I expect both the Bengals and Bears to have top 5 offenses this season. Great to see both teams get good work and stay healthy. So, like I said, by the sounds of it, and staying away from some maybe biased Chicago beat reporters, seems like it was a pretty up and down practice for both teams. We'll get to the defense later on because the defense, shockingly, it was pretty interesting. Actually had a pretty good practice against, like I just mentioned at the top of the show, you got Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, who I went to high school with down here, got to see him play. A lot of cool stuff, but overall, what's your thoughts on hearing, how the offense did out there? Obviously, the Bengals defense last year was pretty Swiss cheese. We played them last year in the regular season. It was a shootout between both offenses. Kind of seemed like a little bit of that today, but maybe a little bit of both these defenses getting a little bit better from last year.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, it's 7 days away between I'm on a jet plane flying into Nashville. So while I love hearing about the game, reading about the game and these practices, my mind is all on next week where I get to see it live and in person. So I'm really excited about that. Plus, get to hang out with you for the weekend and enjoy some father-son time together while we watch the Bears as they practice, and then ultimately that Saturday night preseason game against the Titans. Listen, it's a joint practice, which is great, right? So it's not the offense and defense going against each other up in Lake Forest, where they kind of have tendencies and know how things work out. So it's good to see what they do against a different defense. And Dexter Lawrence, like you said, he's one of the best in the business. Clearly was able to get in the backfield. Sounds like there was some sacks too potentially on Caleb during this joint practice, some skirmishes as well. But for a Cincinnati Bengals reporter to come out and say, "Hey, this looks like 2 top 5 power offenses," I think we can expect there to be a couple opportunities, right? When you look at defenses, we know our defenses aren't the best. We know they've made some improvements as well, considering what we did to them last year when we won that game. But I'm okay with it. It's one practice. It's not a game. It's not a W or an L in the win-loss column of the regular season. So I think, iron sharpens iron, and this will make us even better. And Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen and the coaching staff get to see a different perspective in what be thrown our way and how we're going to be able to handle that when we get to the regular season. That's my take. But it is nice to hear about the touchdowns, specifically the laser to Colston, and obviously a couple others there. I think 3 touchdowns on the day, which was pretty good.
Way more than that.
At least for that one session I was hearing about. That's pretty awesome. So, we want a 37, 38 point a game offense, and it sounds like we're well on our way of getting it there. At least we weren't talking about can't do the cadence, false starts, running the wrong route, things of that nature, like we were hearing last year. So I think we're good. I think we're good.
Yeah, that's a great point that you bring up about last year. Last year at this time, like you said, we were hearing all the way up until that first game against Minnesota, false start after false start. People weren't getting lined up right, just didn't really know the whole Ben Johnson, trickery playbook that he has, very advanced, very technical, everything's highly detailed. And I think I will say the very first play, which this does suck, but after this, apparently it was all good. The very first snap exchange between Garrett Bradbury and Caleb was fumbled. But outside of that, no pre-snap penalties, nothing along those lines like you were just bringing up. Obviously, they're going to pop up occasionally. It's football. It happens in every game. But you don't want to see, like we heard last year, where it was like 5 to 7 a practice, just continuously not being able to get lined up right, people false starting based on cadence issues, stuff along those lines. But like you said, It's great. I mean, would I like to hear that the Bears offense dominated the day 100%, but at the same time, you got to remember at these joint practices, they're not, coming in with a game plan of how they're going to attack the Bengals. It's really just go in there. You have your plays that you're going to run, you run them. It's not, for example, Dexter Lawrence, elite player, but if it's a game plan, they're probably focusing in on him a little bit more, stuff along those lines. It's a joint practice. You're going out there, you're seeing what you got, how you compare to a different team. Because obviously in preseason, you're just practicing against your own teammates. So you're not seeing any other looks. You're getting different looks. It's really good, really healthy for the team. And honestly, I was more interested in hearing how the defense sounded, which we'll get to them later in the show. But I just want to break down a couple of things, really get your thoughts. I can give my thoughts as well. Let's dive into this left tackle competition that's currently going on right now. Because if there's anything that I'm concerned about, it's definitely that. As I talked about at the top of the show, Jedrick Wills and Karan Amagaji earlier this week, they got the boot. They're gone out of this left tackle competition. It sounds like, honestly, I think Karan even might be cut from this team. He might not even make this 53-man roster, but they got moved over to right tackle. And kind of like last year, halfway through training camp, Theo Benedict and Ozzie Trapillo got moved over to left tackle for that competition with Braxton Jones. You're seeing the same thing now. Earlier this week, Ben Johnson said Jedrick Wills and Karan are moving over to right tackle, and Theo Benedict is going to come over from right tackle to left tackle. Braxton Jones returned back from his injury, so he's back. And it was them two out there taking turns with the ones, getting reps in. And like most of the reports were, Ozzie Trapillo was doing just fine up until that last period, which that could have to do with stamina, endurance, whatever it may be. But he wasn't. The last drive, it sounded like those 2-minute drills. It sounded like every single drive was pressure coming from him, just getting blown by, missing assignments. They're running some stunts up front on the Bengals front, and Theo was pretty much going to the inside guy, which is Joe Tooney's guy, and then letting the other guy that was running the stunt run right past him, getting the speed on him. So you don't like to hear that. My take on this left tackle competition is how soon can Ozzie Trapillo get back on the field? Because as much as Braxton Jones has been a serviceable left tackle when he is healthy, he's been with the Bears for a while now, but I would feel comfortable if Ozzie Trapillo is out there. We saw what he looked like towards the end of the season last year. He finally started to find his footing and was very dominant. If we can get him out there, I'm going to feel really comfortable about this O-line. Granted, I do feel comfortable because the 3 out of the 5 of them you can say are good to elite. At least I would put Joe Tooney and Darnell Wright for sure in that elite category, and then Jonah Jackson kind of fluctuating somewhere in between. Garrett Bradbury, he's more of a veteran. He's serviceable. It's really that left tackle spot I'm looking at, and that's why I wanted to dive deeper into it. But my thoughts are, how fast can Ozzie Trapillo get back out on that field?
Yeah, I think. Well, I don't think we've talked about this yet, but we know that Ozzie Trapillo obviously is healthy, so to speak, right? Where he's coming back, he's already practicing, which is awesome. We didn't expect him for a while, so I think that really answers a lot of questions about during the draft because everyone was like, "Hey, we need a left tackle. We have some opportunity. What's Trapillo going to do?" And then I know they did the Jedrick Wills signing, but with all that being said, they knew in the background Ozzie was on a faster timeline than what we all thought or expected. So now I understand the draft day decisions. I guess the other thing will come down to is, which one goes. Does Karan go or does Jedrick go? And does it make the final 53-man roster? I think is the thought you got to think about, and who's gonna be another individual that we sign to that final 53-man roster. And we'll find out through the next 2 joint practices between Cincinnati and Titans. The next 2 preseason games. Obviously, they're talking about the starters not playing in those games, which I'm perfectly okay with, to keep them healthy and keep them out of harm's way. And I think, Braxton last year, he did his part. There was some opportunity. I think Theo as well will be serviceable, all in the hopes of, hey, get us through these first few games. And you think about it, what do we play? We play the Panthers first. I think then we have the Vikings.
And then the Eagles.
and the Eagles are in there. So, which that'll be a tough one, right? Jalen Carter and that defensive line is pretty good with the Eagles, and Jalen Hurts. You know how awesome he is. Wink, wink. I had to do that too. But if we can use those two and get through to where Ozzy is, back to health and ready, has game day stamina and ready to go, I think we're okay. But I think it really answers the question now of why we did what we did in the draft, and I feel much better position. Again, you always say in polls we trust, and here's another thing: he knew more information than we did, rightfully so, as the GM of the Bears, and I think he made the right decision. So I think we'll be okay. I really do.
Yeah.
I said it before, and I'll say it again. It's all about Caleb Williams and keeping him healthy. We're making the right decisions during the preseason. He's not playing in the game, so we're keeping him out of, some 6th-round draft pick trying to make a name for himself and injure him, versus the ones or the starters going at it during the regular season when it matters. And so we'll go from there. But I think ultimately we're going to be okay. Just keep him protected, and I think those left tackles will do their part.
Yeah, I definitely think Karan's off the team. I don't even think it's a question anymore. He's been here for a little bit now. He's had plenty of time to develop and show, what he's capable of. I just
He
think,
always looks lost.
yeah, I just think he is for sure out the door. I think Jedrick Wills stays just because the previous first round talent, and if he can somehow get healthy, then maybe they can get something out of him. But he's gonna be probably he'll be a backup at best, but I think he'll make the team just for the depth part of it. Um, Theo Benedict still is probably going to be your swing tackle. He was last
Yep.
year when Ben Johnson does a lot of those jumbo packages. He often comes in as that third tight end or just that sixth offensive lineman on run plays or heavy play action stuff. So I just really think Karan's going to be the odd man out here. He's had plenty of time, and it just really hasn't worked out. It's unfortunate to see, but at the end of the day, he can't really complain because he's got plenty of opportunities to kind of show, what
Yeah.
he's capable of, and he just didn't capitalize. And that's what it's about. When you're one of these people that is behind somebody and people go down, you have to rise to the occasion. That's how, you can make the team. So on the talks of rise to the occasion, I brought this guy up last week before that Bengal or the Browns game, and I said, watch out for number 27, Caden Davis, wide receiver, who is really pushing to make a roster spot here. He had about 88 yards on 4 catches last week. Well, guess what? Today in this joint practice, seems like Ben Johnson rewarded him for his good play and let him get a couple reps with the first team out there. Ended up catching a touchdown pass today from Caleb Williams. So this guy, I seriously think he reminds me a lot, not their play style, but just the way the story's going. It reminds me a lot of Jahdae Walker last year. Jahdae Walker was more, though, in the games, in the preseason games, he was making all those electric plays.
Mm-hmm.
Caden Davis isn't just doing it in the games. He's doing it every day in practice. Almost every beat reporter out of Chicago, all training camp for these past 2.5 weeks has literally said, oh, Caden Davis with a spectacular catch. Caden Davis this, Caden Davis that. Like every day he's making a play. Now he gets a chance with the ones, and he's doing the same thing. A very cool fun fact, too, earlier this week, one of the players, I forget which player, but they had a press conference after practice, and they were asked, essentially the Bears training staff, they run those speedometers on these players to see how fast they're running with the top speeds they hit. And then after practice, the trainers put them on the board. The top 5 people get put up on a board. Well, you want to know who's on the board every single day? It's Caden Davis and Dylan Thieneman. These guys are out there. They're flying around the field constantly over 20 miles per hour. They even say some days they have their name multiple times in that top 5 at the end of practice. If not, it's happening every single day. Their names are up there. They're reoccurring in the top 3. Caden Davis, I think, is a lock to get the last wide receiver position. Kind of sucks from a story standpoint of Scotty Miller, hometown kid. Loved watching him when Tom Brady was on his way out. Just all the plays Scotty Miller would make. Thought it would be a cool story. He played high school football with Cole Kmet on the same team. Would have been a cool story, but it doesn't even seem like it's close anymore. It seems like this is Caden Davis's job to lose to get that 6th spot. And honestly, I feel like we're so deep at wide receiver, but just having a guy like Caden Davis, where in case a bunch of guys do go down, you've got a guy like this that is just making plays when his number's called. And that's why I'm saying it reminds me a lot of Jahdae Walker. He didn't play that much last year in the actual season, but when he did get called on to come and play because we were beat up or people went down, Jahdae Walker rose to the occasion every single time. So just super cool to see a great story developing throughout this training camp. But I think it's no question Caden Davis is going to get that wide receiver 6 spot to wrap up that room of Rome Odunze, Khalif Raymond, Luther Burden, Jahdae Walker. Trying to think too. There's got to be another receiver in there, maybe 5 receivers. I don't know. I think I'm missing one guy off the top of my head. I can't recall right now, but I think he's definitely going to make this team, and it's just cool to see him make plays with the first team as well, because he's done it a couple times in training camp against the Bears team, but seeing it against another team too, he clearly knows what he's doing. He knows his playbook. And Ben Johnson, they love speed. They love guys that can fly around the field and do it effortlessly.
Yeah, I think it's a cool story. Obviously, right? The small town, JUCO, D1 doesn't happen. D2, he performs well. Been around the league a little bit, kind of bouncing around. But he's the underdog, right? He takes advantage of it. He's making the most of it. And sounds like he's doing everything he can to earn that roster spot. At the end of the day, if he makes it, it'll be a great story. If he doesn't, I'm sure, potential practice squad or something like that. But that's just
he won't make it to the practice squad.
You
Someone
think
else
someone will sign him right away?
Because you got to remember, these people that they cut, they have to clear the waiver wire first, which is like a 24-hour to 48-hour period, and then the Bears can sign them to their practice squad. But I don't think it's like the Jahdae Walker story last year. They even talked about it. Ben Johnson said last year they had no choice but to keep Jahdae Walker because all the plays he was making, like if they would have let him go, he would have been picked up instantly. I think it'll be the same with Caden Davis.
Same way. Well, yeah. Again, it goes back to he's just making the most of his opportunities. Like life, right? No matter what you do in life, you're going to be presented with opportunities, and it just depends on how bad you want it. Sounds like he definitely has the skill set, but he's putting in the extra effort, and he's fighting like a dog to get it, which will be really, really cool. Because I did go back and watch the Browns Bears preseason game and was kind of doing a little bit of the all 22 and the shortened version just to watch some of the offensive plays as it was going down, and he looked really good. Granted, it's a bunch of 2s and 3s out there, but he was making the most of the opportunity he had to make a name for himself and continue to be a name mentioned in the room when they're making decisions on what they're going to do at the end of preseason with the 53-man roster. So I feel good. I like him. I like his nickname. His nickname's fun. You can't go wrong with that. Nothing wrong with the little white lightning. So we'll see how it pans out. But I definitely like him. I mean,
yeah,
we have offensive talent.
Yeah, we have plenty of offensive talent, and it doesn't hurt to have more options in case, like I said, knock on wood, but anything happens. People go down, injuries happen. Hopefully nothing serious, but like I said, middle of the game, maybe Rome Odunze has to go check into a medical tent for a concussion. He might have to play a couple snaps. So when you have people like this ready to go with playmakers behind them, it's just electric, and I really do think he's going to get one of these roster spots coming up, but just wanted to show him some love. Speaking of Jahdae Walker, it was a little concerning. I don't think I heard his name mentioned in any of the reports today, especially with Luther Burden being out. He's been getting some snaps with the ones, and it doesn't sound like he was really targeted at all based on the reports I was reading. Didn't really see his name mentioned at all. So a little weird, because if you remember too, the practice right before this, he was making a bunch of plays. The Bears posted on social media just highlight catch after highlight catch, one-handers all in there. So a little weird, did not see his name. On the other positive side, Rome Odunze, that second 11-on-11, he broke a tackle and ran a touchdown in from deep. So good to see that. Rome, like we talked about, as long as Rome can stay healthy, last year through the first 5 weeks, he was at the top of all the categories you could be for the wide receivers. You obviously got his jersey on today. He's kind of a guy that's in a little bit kind of flying under the radar. maybe people not showing him as much as respect as he deserves, especially with all the Luther Burden hype. You got Colston Loveland, and Rome's kind of got pushed to the side a little bit. But I think Rome is going to surprise a lot of people when the season starts. His foot obviously feels fantastic. And now that I'm thinking of it, Rome Odunze was the one that talked about that speedometer chart that gets posted. It was in his press conference, and he's just think he's quietly flying under the radar, but he made some plays today. Khalif Raymond had a couple of touchdowns. Colston Loveland had a couple of touchdowns. Seems like obviously we know the Caleb and Colston connection. It's been there since the second half of last year. It's obviously the main talking point of training camp. But Khalif Raymond, who we brought over from the Lions, who knows Ben Johnson's system, he made a bunch of plays today. Had a couple of deep balls, caught some touchdowns today. So it's good to hear that as well, because he's probably, once Luther gets back, that's going to be our core three this year is Raymond, Luther, and Rome Odunze. And then obviously you have Colston Loveland and Cole Kmet. But cool to see those other players shining as well. I don't think there's too much other to talk about with the offense. Like I said, just to wrap it up, pretty up and down day. Started off slow the first 11 on 11, and then the Bears started to pick it up. And then the highlight of the day, probably the offense's high, was that red zone period. There was plenty of Bengals reports, just literally Caleb Williams looks great in red zone. Literally, just every play, touchdown, 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 which you love to hear because the Bears actually struggled in the red zone last year. A lot of their touchdowns came outside, like the bigger chunk plays. And to see them capitalize in the red zone, and have, like, it sounded like every play was just touchdown here, touchdown there in the red zone period. So to hear that is very cool. But other than that, it ended on a bad note. Bears are definitely going to want that one back. You can almost feel it in Caleb Williams' presser afterwards. He had the press conference literally like 5 minutes after practice ended. You can kind of hear it in his voice a little bit. He's going to go back and watch some of that and be disappointed. I think he threw 2 picks today, one in that 2-minute drill, and then the other one was in the other 2-minute period, and Dexter Lawrence tipped a screen up to himself and literally picked it. So Caleb's definitely going to want some of that back, because it sounded like early on it wasn't all sunflowers and rainbows, and then the Bears started to pick it up and continued to start big snowball rolling downhill, and then it ended very badly. So you don't like to hear that, but let's hop over to this defense, because honestly, like I said, was super excited to see how this defense would fare up with this Bengals offense. And they started off rough. A lot of it, you just saw completion here, completion there, completion this, completion that. And then the Bears defense started to find some momentum and pretty much going toe-to-toe with this Bengals offense, which we all know when Joe Burrow's healthy and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are out there, this offense is lethal. And the Bears defense sounded like the second half of the day started to hang with this Bengals offense. By most of the reporters, I even listened to a couple of podcasts before we did ours, and it just wanted to make sure what I was seeing on the timeline was what was being reflected on some of these podcasts. And that's exactly what it was. They said the second half of it, the Bears defense started to fight. It was a lot of back and forth. And probably the biggest story, a lot of people are saying this might have been the Dylan Thieneman turning point where it's starting to click for him. He had a pick today on Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow tried to fit a pass into Mike Gesicki, their tight end. Was pretty tight coverage, went off his fingertips though. And Dylan Thieneman, like people were saying, when a ball gets tipped, sometimes it comes right to you. Apparently this ball got tipped, but it was still humming, was up here around his shoulder, and he just quickly reacted in a split second, got the pick, and took it back to the house. Ended up in a scruffle afterwards because Dio Adangbo apparently got through on a pass rushing part of that play and grabbed Joe Burrow a little bit and then wasn't letting go. Obviously, in these practices, quarterbacks are off limit. You're not supposed to touch them for obvious reasons. You don't want quarterbacks getting hurt. Joe Burrow apparently pushed him. It started a big thing. Love to see it, though. It's part of it. It's part of the getting the pads on. But apparently after that, it was all good. Other sides of the defense, this is probably the brightest story. Everyone is curious, how does Jalen Johnson look? How is he feeling? Well, if you want an indication of how Jalen Johnson feeling, I'm telling you, he's probably in for his Pro Bowl caliber type player. He is. Apparently, he was lined up with Jamar Chase pretty much the majority of the day. Well, if you go, I'll tell you right now, go on your Twitter, go on your social media, search Bengals versus Bears joint practice, and go scroll through the highlight plays of what people are talking about. You're not going to hear Jamar Chase's name, and there's a reason for that. Jalen Johnson was matched up with him plenty of times. I think literally out of the 2.5 hour period, people said he caught a couple of balls. That's it. And none were big time plays, touchdowns. So that is a great sign for Jalen Johnson. On the flip side, your guy, you were a big fan of him last year, Tyreek Stevenson. He was back out there today. He's been missing practice a little bit. So, yeah, he split time out there. T. Higgins was the one who took over today. If you go look at those highlights, it's literally T. Higgins this, T. Higgins that. But apparently, though, too, some of the Bears reporters did say, like, some of these were just better throws than it was great coverage, but a better throw. He was still tight on coverage, but also T. Higgins had his fair share of just being two. T. Higgins is a very underrated receiver in this football league. Gets overlooked because of Jamar Chase and how dynamic he is. But T. Higgins will often remind you why he's a great receiver as well. He did it against us last year in the regular season. If you remember, I think he had 2 or 3 touchdowns against us. But on the bright side, I think that's my biggest takeaway today is obviously the Dylan Thieneman news. Got in on a sack too outside of that pick. And then Jalen Johnson. I mean, Jamar Chase is an elite receiver. And to not hear Jamar Chase's name a bunch today, there's a good reason for that on the Bears side, and that's Jalen Johnson. So just overall cool to hear.
I think you said another name in the very beginning of talking about the defense who got in the little kerfuffle. I heard he's having a pretty good camp.
Who's that?
Dio.
No,
that's what I heard.
I don't know if I would say he's having a good camp. I mean, I would say it's impressive how fast he came back from that torn Achilles. That's for sure.
Right? That's impressive.
And I'm almost positive he tore that Achilles against this Bengals team in that game, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was against them. I've heard he's had some good days, but I don't think he's had a crazy camp. But
he's coming back from Achilles and he's making action.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll help. He's not going to be the main guy. Obviously, it's going to be Austin Booker. So yeah, I think it'll help maybe because he's a little bit of a bigger guy to maybe come in situationally. It often helps pass rushers. That's why you saw with the Seahawks last year. They didn't have anybody have 10+ sacks. They just had a bunch of guys that had 4 and 5 sacks because they were rotating waves and waves and waves of people in constantly. Right. And if we can get production like that where, Dio Dangbo has 4 to 5 sacks, Grady Jarrett has 4 to 5 sacks, and then you have a couple big guys like Montez Sweat and Austin Booker contribute up into the 8 to 10 range. Yeah, it could be very good. And to credit, though, the Bengals offensive line, we know it's not the best. I heard there was a good amount of sacks by the Bears defense, which you still like to see because we know how our defensive line is. It's a big question mark. But to see they were able to generate some pressure, get some sacks in there, that's good to hear as well. But I'm not going to put too much account into that because if you watch the Bengals preseason game last year, their first offensive play, Joe Burrow got sacked in the backfield by Detroit Lions' second-team defense. But
it was pretty rough.
One other player I want to highlight as well, who I think's been having a really good camp and also apparently made some plays today, is Devin Bush, the linebacker we got over from the Browns this offseason. Apparently had a really nice breakup on a play. I think it was in 7-on-7s, which is very favorable for the offense. There's no defensive line out there. But Devin Bush dropped back in coverage, noticed a receiver was leaking, and literally his speed, the reason the Bears got him, their whole thing about upgrading the speed on their defense, literally drops back diagonally and apparently knocked down a beautiful ball. The Bears, I think it was on a big 3rd down too, and the Bears defense all rallied around him afterwards, celebrating. Just so another good player that we're going to need a lot of out of this year. But sounded like he made some plays today as well. But my 2 biggest takeaways for this defense, obviously, are Dylan Thieneman, who I said, once again, had an interception. And then also on top of that, had a sack to end practice as well. What would have been a sack on Joe Burrow. And then obviously Jalen Johnson, because if Jalen Johnson can get back to that form, we know what he's like. He literally can take a wide receiver out of a game if he's playing at that capability. And to do it against a guy like Jamar Chase, that is a very, very encouraging start. I do want to talk about a guy, though, that isn't out there. Maybe before I do that, let's talk a little bit about this nickelback position where Kyler Gordon does play. I think you can see where I'm taking this, but Malik Muhammad, our other rookie, apparently he's like the sole guy. For a while early on, they were rotating guys at the nickelback. It looks like Malik Muhammad is now getting those reps, and it's just him. They're not rotating Cam Lewis in anymore. If it is, it's very rare and occasionally. But Malik Muhammad, just finally starting to find some rhythm as well. I think most of the reporters at Chicago said it's been a very up and down. He has great days, he has bad days, but you have to remember we drafted him as an outside cornerback to compete with Tyler Stevenson, and now he's getting pushed to the inside in that slot nickel position where Kyler Gordon usually plays. But heard there's some good progress with him there. Obviously, we'll probably see him on Saturday as well. He made a bunch of big plays in that Browns game last week, which was really encouraging to see. So we'll see. But he's another name I wanted to bring up. But before I dive into this next guy, go ahead.
No. Do you think Kyler Gordon's really hurt, or you just think he doesn't want to play?
I think he's really hurt, but I do want to spin this. I know Ben Johnson, once again, he got asked about Kyler Gordon this week, and it's literally he's rehabbing. It's very short-winded. You can feel the attitude in his presence, his voice, the way he's presenting this information, that he's just sick and tired of it, which you can't blame him because he's been here now going on his second year, and he's probably seen Kyler Gordon practice maybe 3 weeks combined. And
you think it's physical or mental?
I think it's physical. It's soft tissue stuff, and soft tissue injuries are really tricky because if you don't let them heal 100%, they just keep popping up. You kind of got to just let it run its course. And if you come back even a second early, it's going to get re-aggravated. You just got to be really careful with it. But I did want to bring this up. This is where I was going to go with this. I know it doesn't sound positive, but I do think there is some positive signs that Kyler Gordon could be back here in a little bit. After practice, apparently, Kyler Gordon went out on the field with some trainers and was getting in some workout. A lot of reporters saw him afterwards come back in, dripping sweat. So he's getting a good workout in. That's good to see, good signs. He's been a lot more, if you remember too, in the beginning of training camp, they were like, we don't even see him out on the field. Like usually, even if people are hurt, you'll still see him out on the field with the team, just not in their stuff. But this past week, you're starting to see Kyler Gordon and a lot of stuff out on the field. You saw it in the scrimmage last week. He was at the Stevenson High School, got a workout in there with the trainers on the side. Sounds like today he got in a pretty good workout after the practice because he came back in sweating, dripping sweat by some reporters who saw him on the way back in, on their way out. And I just really feel like they might be playing it cautious. Maybe it's a little bit of showmanship. I do think a lot of it is Ben Johnson just actually mad, but I do think a lot of it could be showmanship too, that these coaches do, not showing their hands before these weeks come where people might not think Kyler Gordon. It sounds like Kyler, if you were looking out, it sounds like Kyler Gordon ain't playing the whole season, but it could be some showmanship. Maybe they know their goal is to rest him and just get him ready and amped up. But I do think it's a little bit positive news starting to flow Kyler Gordon's way. Even TJ Edwards talked after the practice today and said, we're just waiting for him to get back out here. He's taking rehab pretty serious. So I do think there are some positive signs, but it's more a bold take than anything or a prediction. I do think, though, that we'll see him out there here soon, which if we can get him out there, man, it would change a lot of things. Malik Muhammad can go back to that corner position, or with Kyler Gordon's flexibility, you might even be able to put him back there at safety with Dylan Thieneman, because if you think about it, Dennis Allen talked about last year in training camp when Kyler Gordon was healthy. He was having him do safety, nickel, and corner because he is that chess piece for him. And I think safety would be a lot more easier on his soft tissue stuff because at safety, it's a lot more you're waiting for the play to come to you more than you're up at the line. You got to make all these quick cuts and strains on your muscles. So if we can get him back, it would be great. It would literally be great.
Okay, now hear me out. This is why I brought up, is it physical or is it mental? So I don't think Coach Johnson would be very short of abrupt with his answer if it was physical, right? I think he'd be understanding. Unfortunately, he's injured. It's the body. It does what it does. It sounds like to me, remember last year with the Nate Davis stuff, right? They were very, or 2 years ago, they were very upset with, what's going on. There was more of a mental thing. And this seems very similar. Like, I know we talked about this earlier. Like, I watched the offseason YouTube stuff with Kyler Gordon of him practicing in the offseason, and he looked phenomenal, right? So I'm wondering, is the injury that he did have last year that, sidelined and kept him out, that it psychologically messed with him? I know you've been hurt before playing sports. I've broken some bones as an individual. And there is a psychological piece to it when you have a medical situation go down where you're concerned that you're going to put yourself back in that position or you're going to get injured. And there's this barrier, and almost to the point of you're so scared of getting hurt again that you get hurt even worse than if you just played naturally. So I'm wondering, is there maybe a little bit of psychological in there versus the physical piece in there? And they're trying to work through that. Because if he's coming off the field practicing after the practice and he's sweating, you're moving, right? I mean, I think there's something to it.
I don't think it's like Nate Davis. Nate Davis, if you remember, was literally not coming to practice and just sitting at home and, I got personal stuff going on. Kyler Gordon's been at the field. If you remember too, before training camp started that first day, why it was disappointing to Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson is because he spent his whole summer at Hallis Hall, Kyler Gordon training.
Well, I don't think it's physical.
I don't know. I don't think it's psychological at all.
I think it is.
It's not, because if first off too, I think I never had a big time injury, but most of those psychological stuff comes from those big time injuries. Oh, you blew your knee out last season. Now you're scared to maybe go as fast. This stuff is soft tissue pulled muscles. It's not anything along the lines where you're thinking about, oh my God, I might roll my ankle again or pull my hammy. Like, it's not, I don't think it's anything psychological at all. I think it really is just, I think it's more so, I really wonder what he is doing outside of training camp to take care of his body, because at this point, it does seem like he might not be doing everything 100% where you have everything in your control, because that soft tissue injury happens a lot, not stretching correctly, not, especially when you get older. I mean, I don't play any sports anymore, but if you're not doing the right things as your body gets older, you're going to injure, because you got to remember, this is the other thing.
I mean, as old as I am, I get out of the bed the wrong way and I injure myself.
Well, exactly. But that's what I'm saying. This is why I don't think it's psychological either, because if you remember in the Eberflus era, when that's where he was first drafted, he didn't miss barely any time. It started last season in training camp before Ben Johnson got here, and he ended up pulling something. And ever since then, it's just been lingering, and he can't get it to go away. So I think it's more so stuff he's doing outside, maybe not taking care of his body correctly or the best way, because you see it happen a lot. I mean, even with our rivals up north and Christian Watson, he finally last year was able to put together a decent season where he was out on the field, but he's had the same thing, and it's their biggest complaint is he just misses time from soft tissue stuff. It's really tricky, and like I said, if you're pushing yourself too much, or maybe that's what it is too. Maybe he's doing the right stuff at the training facility with the trainers, and then he goes home and you see a lot of stuff. He is a big Instagram poster if you keep up with him, and he posts a lot of him working outside of the facility. So is he pushing himself to get back outside more, like outside of just the training facility, and he's pushing his body too much and, overdoing it, that could be part of it too. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. I don't think it's psychological though. The guy freaking does backflips, Spider-Man. That's why he's Spidey. I think it's more so he's really dealing with an injury. And I think Ben Johnson's just mad because at a certain point, they know how good of Ben Johnson knows how good of a player is. He played against him when he was with the Lions, and they know how good of a player he is. And it's just frustrating. It's probably more so frustrating to Ben Johnson because he wants to see him out there, but it doesn't seem like this injury seems to go away. And it honestly, in Ben Johnson's case, it seems like he's just more annoyed of getting asked on an update because Ben Johnson does it a lot with anybody that's injured. He kind of brushes it off and doesn't want to talk about it. Like more so, you'll see him when you see him type of guy. But with Kyler Gordon, he knows every time he gets up the podium, there's going to be a question about it. And he's probably more just so sick of it because he doesn't have an update. There's no update at the time. And if there is, he would give it to you. He's just a straight shooter. So
that's your take. That's my take.
That's how I look at it. But I do think he is trending in the right direction. It would be really cool to see him get lifted off this PUP list here next week sometime. It would be great because it would encourage me a lot more if he gets some practices in with the team before the season starts. Not, week 1 against the Panthers, we're elevating him, and then he goes out there, doesn't get really any full speed reps, and then pulls it again. But I do have a prediction. I think he might get lifted off this PUP list sometime next week. It would be really cool to see.
Do you have an inside source, or is it just a gut feeling?
No, just as a gut feeling.
Okay.
I wish I had an inside source. But if I could connect the dots, like I was just talking about, he's a big social media guy. If you remember last year, right before he was about to come back, he started posting a bunch of videos on Instagram with the Spidey signs. He's been posting a little bit of that on training camp or the past week or so of him doing those workouts outside with the Spidey emoji. I think he's getting close. That's me just connecting some dots. But
or maybe he's saying there's no way home.
There's no way home. Yeah, it definitely could be. But I did
or
just
it's homecoming.
Yeah. We'll see. I hope my predictions are right though, because we do need him out there, especially with the Kobe Bryant news that we found out last week. It would be massive to get him back out there. But we'll see, man. But on the positive side, obviously, with this defense, once again, it's cool to see them compete with this offense because we know how talented the Bengals offense is when healthy. And to hear it started off rough. Apparently, it was just a bunch of completions for the first 2 team sessions. But then after that, the Bears defense seemed to pick it up. And as I said from the Cincy Reporter, seems like a pretty back and forth practice for both sides of the ball, which is, like I said, do I wish the offense, I heard the report, the offense just dominated the Bengals defense 100%. But at the same time, I can deal with a back and forth practice between both teams because, like you said earlier, iron sharpens iron. This is also the first time the starters are playing against a different team. And then once again, when you go into these practices, you're not prepping. Yeah, you look into it a little bit, but you're not calling plays or scheming based on, a game day. You're kind of going in there, running all your stuff, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work. And, I think a little bit of it is too, you still don't show all your hand because these coaches talk to each other, different relationships around the league, share stuff with it. Which a cool side story, obviously Zach Taylor, the Bengals head coach, the Bears' new offensive coordinator, obviously Ben Johnson calls plays, but is his brother Press Taylor. So that was really cool, little family tie in there. But other than that, like you said, I'm excited for next week. I want to go see there, and we can, with our own eyes, give an actual report, not just base our reports off of, what we're hearing from other people. It'll be really cool. And obviously, if you are new here, like, comment, subscribe, stay up to date with us. And especially next week, you'll definitely want to grab our Twitter, which is in the description, and drop a follow there. We will be updating. I mean, we'll figure out the roles here, but One person's going to be a video guy. There's going to be a notepad out. One person's going to have the Twitter going. We'll have it all covered for you guys, keeping everyone updated. We go against the Titans next week, but I am super excited to finally see it in person. And especially, too, that last week before the season starts, we'll get a good grasp of where this team is really headed going into week one. A little bit behind closed doors than most people will know. So it'll be super cool to see that in person.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait. I'm super pumped to get on that plane and touch down in Nashville and just go through that whole experience of going to a joint practice. I think I've never been to one before, so I think it's going to be really neat to kind of watch that whole process in motion. Before we get off here, though, I got a question for you. As we've been talking about this offense, obviously the one reporter for the Bengals saying that he thinks 2 top 5 offenses there. We've heard it before with different teams. You've even heard it with the Bears, with the defense being the monsters of the Midway. What's the nickname this year for this Bears team if the offense is what it is? There's the one report said the Chicago the Windy City Air Show. What you got one you want to coin before we get going, before they actually, put up 38 points a game and, break the 4,000-yard mark and 38 touchdowns? You got one that's lingering in your head that you want to put out there first and be like, you heard it here first?
I do kind of like the air show reference. And if I had to relate it to anything, I might name this offense just Top Gun, just full guns a-blazing, just out
Maverick.
there like fighter jets, just flying at full speed. Especially, we talked about in the beginning with these speed charts of these players. They got fast guys now. They all can fly around the field. You obviously got main guys like Khalif Raymond, Dylan Thieneman, Caden Davis, Luther Burden, DeAndre Swift when he gets free. Like, they are full of speed. Colston Loveland for a tight end is very athletic, very fast for a guy his size. Like, I don't know. If I had to come up with something off the top of my head, I like the little Top Gun. And I watch that Top Gun Maverick movie probably once a month at least. I'm pretty sure you bought it on your Amazon account, and we just have it for good now. And I literally will put it on once a month because it's just so good. Like, it's a great movie, and it reminds me, like, we're like Maverick in the fighting simulations, and you can't stop us. Like, you can't stop them. You try to get away from them. You can't. I don't know. I like the name Top Gun, just like something along those lines. And the air show is good because of the Chicago Air and Water Show that they have there. That's a good name too.
Yeah.
But
I don't like it. There's one reason I don't like it, and it brings me back to the Nagy days when the air raid sirens will always go off at the game. It was so annoying. So I don't know how I feel about the air show one. I like the Top Gun reference. Maybe maybe it's where Caleb Williams walks up to the line as he's commanding the offense, and kind of like in Top Gun, where Maverick is underneath the 2 pilots, and he's like, "Good morning, aviators," and then he flies up in them.
Speaking here.
Yeah, so I don't know. Top Gun may be it. We'll see.
Maybe like Ben Johnson is Maverick, and everyone else are his students, and they just full go backs. It is a little bit, that movie's a little bit of an underdog story. Maybe that would have fit the tone last season because we were underdogs. Now this year, there's still some doubters out there, but the Bears are getting a lot more respect. So
yep.
I don't know. Maybe we need to come up with something else. But
I think next week, while we're at practice watching it in real time, right, with our own 2 eyeballs, we're gonna have to come up with a name and see if we can solidify that for the rest of the season.
Yeah, but I think that'll do it here. Good episode covering the joint practice as best we could. Obviously not being there, but putting stuff together from other beat reporters out there, which I appreciate. I love getting to hear feedback from stuff like this because, if they weren't there, we wouldn't even know what the heck's going on. So cool to have.
Have you reached out to the friend of the program who I believe was on location there?
I have not. I could reach out to Drew and see what his thoughts were. He probably was watching the offense too, because his guy, I don't know what the proper term for him is, but his player is on the defense.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm sure since he was probably more locked into the offense side of the field. So it would be curious to get his thoughts. I do think there was an official report too. Caleb went 17 for 26. And this is kind of paints the story of if they really would have done better in those 3 2-minute situations, his numbers would have been great because the last 3 2 minutes, he didn't complete a pass because of one, the pressure getting through, and then two, just throwing the ball, maybe not making the best decisions. But it was 17 for 26 and obviously a bunch of touchdowns, especially in that red zone period. So, I mean, 17 for 26 off the top of my head, I think that comes out to around like 63, 64% completion percentage, which trending in the right direction. But like I said, they clean up that 2-minute drill. He's probably easily over 70% or at least hovering right around it. And it's really weird because with the Bears team, they've actually been really good at the 2-minute situation in training camp. They've ended a bunch of times with touchdowns. So to see them kind of get a little flustered today just wasn't like them. But maybe like we talked about with the left tackle, pressures getting through, stuff like that. Need to get that cleaned up before the season starts. But still, up and down day, we'll take it. But I'll definitely reach out to Drew, see what he has to say. If he was there in person, it'd be pretty cool to have his thoughts. But as I was saying, just thankful for all the beat reporters out there that get to cover this stuff on a daily basis. It was also just cool to hear perspectives from non-Bears media members who haven't seen the Bears, from these Cincinnati beat reporters who don't get to see the Bears every day, because it was pretty balanced. And obviously, as Chicago fans or a fan of any team, you're going to be a little bit biased in your reporting, maybe think things were a certain way. But to see the Bengals side of it too, where most of them are coming out saying, it was pretty even back and forth day for both teams. You like to hear it, just iron sharpening iron. But if you don't got anything to add before we get out of here, once again, just like, comment, subscribe, share this with any Bears fans you got out there. The season is literally right around the corner. There's also some preseason action all weekend long. So make sure to tune into the games, stay updated, get ready for your fantasy drafts. But we'll catch you next week. We also got, real quick, we got an episode coming out later this week. Probably tomorrow, I think I'm going to release it. We did an NFL team tier list going into the season. It was a lot more easy going than that quarterback one, but it's a lot of fun, though. Just give us our thoughts on that as well. But we'll catch you on the next one. But until then, bear down.